When Sergeant Werner Krause accepted a Kodak Brownie camera from an American guard at Camp Concordia, Kansas, in the summer of 1944, his first reaction was to suspect a trap designed to identify prisoners who possessed contraband or who were planning escape attempts. The idea that American guards would voluntarily provide cameras to enemy prisoners seemed so absurd that Krause and his fellow German POWs spent days debating whether accepting the cameras represented some elaborate test of their compliance with camp regulations or perhaps an intelligence operation to identify Nazi sympathizers through the photographs they chose to take. What the German prisoners discovered over the following months fundamentally challenged everything Nazi propaganda had taught them about American brutality and the treatment they should expect as captured enemy soldiers. The cameras were genuine gifts provided as part of recreational programs designed to keep prisoners occupied and maintain morale. And the photographs that German POWs produced, with those cameras created a visual record of prison camp life in America that documented conditions so different from what they had been told to expect that many prisoners initially refused to believe their own experiences were real. The context for understanding why German POWs found camera access shocking requires examining what Nazi propaganda had told them about American treatment of prisoners and what conditions they actually encountered upon arrival in the United States. German soldiers had been indoctrinated throughout their service with stories portraying Americans as culturally inferior, militarily incompetent, and likely to torture or execute prisoners rather than provide humane treatment. The propaganda emphasized racial themes, claiming that America's mixed population made it weak, and that Jewish influence in American society meant German prisoners would face particular cruelty. This conditioning meant that German soldiers captured in North Africa, Italy, or later in France approached their imprisonment expecting harsh conditions at best and potential execution at worst. When Liberty ships transported captured German soldiers across the Atlantic to POW camps scattered across the American interior, many prisoners spent the voyage in genuine fear about what awaited them. The reality they encountered upon reaching camps in states like Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma, and across the American heartland contradicted their expectations so completely that psychological adjustment required weeks or months. The actual conditions in American POW camps, while certainly representing imprisonment and loss of freedom, provided standards of care that exceeded what many German soldiers had experienced in their own military service. Historical records from the Provost Marshal General's office, which administered POW operations, document that American authorities followed Geneva Convention requirements and in many cases exceeded minimum standards for prisoner welfare. German POWs received the same daily food rations as American soldiers, approximately 4,000 calories per day, a quantity that seemed almost obscene to men who had often gone hungry during campaigns in North Africa or on the Eastern Front. The barracks where prisoners lived, while basic, included heating, electricity, and sanitation facilities that represented luxury compared to frontline conditions. Prisoners could send and receive mail, purchase items from camp canteens using scrip earned through work programs, and participate in recreational activities including sports leagues, theatrical productions, and educational classes. The provision of cameras fit within this broader framework of activities designed to occupy prisoners' time and prevent the psychological deterioration that prolonged idleness could cause. The camera distribution programs emerged from pragmatic American administrative decisions about managing hundreds of thousands of enemy prisoners on American soil. By 1944, approximately 425,000 Axis POWs were detained in camps across the United States, with the vast majority being German soldiers captured in various theaters. Camp commanders faced the challenge of maintaining order and preventing escape attempts among large populations of young men who had nothing to do. Work programs that employed prisoners in agricultural labor and other essential industries addressed part of this challenge. But prisoners also needed constructive activities during non-working hours. The Provost Marshal General's office authorized recreational programs that included sports equipment, musical instruments, art supplies, and in some cases, cameras that prisoners could use to document their daily lives. The photographs served multiple purposes from the American administrative perspective. They provided prisoners with meaningful activity, created documentation of camp conditions that could demonstrate American compliance with international law, and offered prisoners a way to communicate their experiences to family members back in Germany through photographs that could be included with letters home. Werner Krauss, the German sergeant who received one of the first cameras at Camp Concordia, documented his initial skepticism and gradual acceptance in a diary he kept throughout his imprisonment, which was later donated to the Kansas State Historical Society. Krauss wrote that his first photographs were deliberately innocuous, showing only landscapes and buildings, because he assumed American censors would confiscate any images that revealed too much about camp operations or that might have intelligence value. When these photographs were developed and returned to him without comment or confiscation, Krauss became bolder, photographing fellow prisoners, recreational activities, and daily routines. His later diary entries express amazement at the freedom he had been given, noting that the trust American guards showed by providing cameras contradicted everything he had been taught about enemies and warfare. Krauss photographed prisoners playing football, attending church services, working in camp gardens, and celebrating holidays, creating a visual record that documented the mundane normalcy of camp life rather than the suffering he had been conditioned to expect. The types of photographs that German POWs chose to take with the cameras they received reveal much about what aspects of camp life they found most significant or surprising. Collections of POW photographs preserved in various archives show recurring themes that appear across different camps and photographers. Many prisoners photographed food, particularly the meals they received that seemed abundant, compared to their military service experiences. These food photographs were often sent home to Germany, where families were experiencing severe shortages, serving as evidence that the imprisoned soldiers were better fed than their relatives in a war-torn homeland. Prisoners also extensively photographed recreational activities, documenting sports competitions, theatrical performances, and hobby activities that filled their time. These images portrayed imprisonment as surprisingly comfortable, a message that created cognitive dissonance for many prisoners who struggled to reconcile their comfortable circumstances with Nazi propaganda about American cruelty and with their knowledge that their comrades were dying on the Eastern Front. The administrative review process for prisoner-generated photographs involved censorship mechanisms designed to prevent security breaches while allowing prisoners substantial photographic freedom. Camp authorities required that all photographs be submitted for review before being sent in letters to Germany, and censors examined images for potential intelligence value such as guard schedules, security arrangements, or camp layouts that might facilitate escape planning. In practice, censors approved the vast majority of photographs, recognizing that images of daily life posed minimal security risks. The censorship records from various camps show that rejected photographs were rare and typically involved images that clearly showed security features or that captured American military equipment or personnel in ways that might have intelligence applications. Prisoners learned quickly what subjects would pass censorship and adapted their photography accordingly, focusing on aspects of camp life that documented their experiences without triggering security concerns. The psychological impact of camera access on German POW morale manifested in complex and sometimes contradictory ways. For some prisoners, the ability to document their experiences and share images with families provided comfort and maintained connections to life beyond the wire. These prisoners appreciated the cameras as evidence of humane treatment and as tools for preserving memories of a strange interlude in their military service. For other prisoners, particularly those who remained committed to Nazi ideology, the comfortable conditions documented in their photographs created feelings of shame and guilt. These prisoners struggled with the knowledge that they were living comfortably while their comrades fought and died, and some refused to participate in recreational activities or take photographs because doing so felt like betrayal. The photographs they did not take are as significant as those they did, revealing American guards and camp administrators generally viewed prisoner photography as a successful component of camp management, that reduced tensions and maintained order. Reports from camp commanders frequently cited recreational programs, including photography, as contributing to low rates of escape attempts and minimal disciplinary problems. The photographs that prisoners produced also served American interests by documenting conditions that exceeded Geneva Convention requirements, creating evidence that could counter potential accusations of mistreatment. Some American personnel developed friendly relationships with German prisoners who showed interest in photography, sharing technical advice and occasionally providing additional film or equipment. These interactions, while technically violating rules against fraternization, reflected the practical reality that guards and prisoners spent months or years in close proximity, and that maintaining purely adversarial relationships was difficult when prisoners posed no immediate threat and were living in conditions that both groups recognized as relatively comfortable. The long-term preservation of POW photographs has been uneven, with many images remaining in private family collections, while others have been donated to archives and historical societies. Researchers studying German POW experiences in America have used these photographs to reconstruct daily life in camps and to understand how prisoners perceived their imprisonment. The images provide visual documentation that complements written records and oral histories, showing rather than just describing the conditions prisoners experienced. Particularly striking are photographs that show German prisoners in casual, relaxed poses that contradict stereotypes about rigid military discipline, images of prisoners smiling and engaging in leisure activities that would have been impossible in combat zones. These photographs reveal the strange liminal space that POW camps represented, where military hierarchy persisted, but the immediate threat of death had been removed, creating circumstances that some prisoners described as the most peaceful period of their wartime experience. The question of what happened to prisoner-generated photographs after the war intersects with broader questions about how Germans processed their wartime experiences and how American treatment of POWs fit into evolving narratives about World War II. Many German POWs who returned home after the war kept their American photographs as private memories, sometimes sharing them with family members, but rarely displaying them publicly in a society grappling with defeat and occupation. The images represented a complicated period that did not fit neatly into narratives of either victimization or guilt, showing Germans who had been treated well by an enemy while their own nation committed atrocities. Some veterans donated their POW photographs to museums or archives decades later, as aging brought reflections on experiences that had shaped their lives. These late donations have enriched historical understanding of the POW experience, though they represent only a fraction of the total photographic record that prisoners created. With many images lost or destroyed over the decades, the story of German POWs receiving cameras from American guards illuminates broader themes about warfare, captivity, and the treatment of enemies. The decision to provide cameras reflected American confidence in military victory and adherence to international law, demonstrating that treatment of prisoners could exceed minimum requirements without compromising security. For German prisoners, the cameras became tools for documenting an experience that challenged fundamental assumptions about enemies and warfare, creating visual evidence of humane treatment that contradicted everything Nazi propaganda had taught them. The photographs they produced with those cameras remain as testament to a unique historical moment when enemy soldiers lived in surprising comfort on American soil, documenting through their own lenses conditions that would have seemed impossible before capture. That Werner Krauss and thousands of other German POWs spent their imprisonment taking photographs rather than suffering the brutality they had been conditioned to expect speaks to both the values that guided American treatment of prisoners and the capacity of individual experiences to contradict propaganda narratives, one photograph at a time.